my mic was interfering earlier. I was made to take off earrings and all sorts. So if you can hear me, that's absolutely fine. So hi, I'm POOJA. I'm really excited to give this talk to all of you and hope that you can take away some really cool learnings that we've been having here at the FT. So what did GDPR teach us? Well, how can such a mundane legislation, really boring, not so cool to be working on, teach us at the FT? A lot, I can tell you, because I led that transformation program. No one wanted to touch it with a barge pole. Literally every single product manager across the business was like, no, what am I going to learn from that? Not much. And then I was asked to step in and kind of make it happen. And actually, there's a lot of magic that happened in that project for 6 months, which is what I want to talk to you about today. So just very quickly, a lot of you probably know about the Financial Times, but the Financial Times is an amazing place to work. I've been there for 3 years now. Mike gave you an introduction, so I'm not going to bore you with my history, but it's one of the world's leading news publications, right? And what we've had to do is obviously evolved from print to digital quite recently. 90% of our revenue now comes from digital first thinking. As print revenues were declining, we had to do something. So hence our subscription paywall came up and we started getting lots and lots of money from our subscriptions. And also, as many of you know, advertising revenues have been in decline for the past 10 years. It has obviously impacted the FT as well. Although we make a lot of money from digital advertising, again, we make more from our subscriptions business. You can see our paywall there that I was responsible for a few years ago. We've also had to keep in line with changing news patterns. So doing a study in terms of where people kind of consume their news, whether it be on social media or Google, a lot of people don't actually know who they're connecting with or the brand that they're connecting with. So you read a lot of news, but in fact, the touch point that you have with that brand is so super important to the brand itself. And actually, doing a survey, lots and lots of people didn't know where they were getting this news from at all. So we've had to build apps and we've had to kind of keep in touch with the changing news patterns. Now, this is a monumentous occasion for us. So who reads the FT? Or who subscribes to the FT here? Only a couple of people? Right? Well, thank you very much, because you got us to 1 million subscribers. And this goal was shared a couple of years ago. And the president and the CEO of the FT, as well as the president of Nikkei, who is our owner, defined this goal together. So by 2020, they wanted us to reach 1 million subscribers. And on the 1st of April, April Fool's Day, we hit that target a year ahead of schedule. So thank you very much for getting us there, essentially. We have a best-in-class product and technology team. So there's been a lot of themes this morning in terms of lean canvas, design sprints, Jonathan just talked about. A lot of that happens at the FT, but actually some places lose focus and some places do it really well. So I did a design sprint on one of my projects within the conversion team, which worked really well, but it hasn't stuck throughout the whole organization. So you need that one hit wonder, I think, to make all of these things happen. And actually, we do employ agile lean approach. We build, measure, learn. We ship as soon as we're ready to ship something. That's another talk that I can give for another time, just how that whole process hangs together. But an amazing product and technology team across the 3 locations that we're in. So now we're in London. We've also set up an amazing product and technology team in Sofia, Bulgaria. And we have people in Manila as well working for us. So the ethos of everything that we do in product and tech and delivery is to create great user experiences. And we do that via cross-collaborating with all of our peers around us. You'll see some of the disciplines that we work with on a day-to-day basis, but actually it's the cross-functional team that makes it happen. So we care at the FT. One of our values is caring more about the team than the individual, because that's what makes it happen for us at the FT. And we work on outcome-driven product development. Now, you've heard about this a lot this morning, right, in terms of what it means. So we have a bunch of outcomes that kind of like our investment board have in terms of acquisition, engagement, retention, advertising for one of them, yield. All those kind of outcomes come together, and they trickle down from the top. Now, what we don't tell people to do is how to get there, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we have these outcomes. We've recently employed OKRs in the business as of January this year. It's going really well because at every step of the way, whether it be from the board members at the top to the people that work on day-to-day, the outcomes are shared across the whole entire organization. And your particular stream or your particular program will have those outcomes coming to you as well. And we create hypotheses, right? So hypotheses is great. It's based on hunches, but we use a lot of data and customer insights to do this. Now, I like to think that we're data informed rather than data driven. Because at the end of the day, without qual and quant as a marriage, as a union coming together, you can't make those hypotheses or you can't make any decisions based on your products, right? So you need both of them. And that's why we kind of say that we're data informed rather than data led. And that's really important at the FT because we have a bunch of amazing data analytics teams, members that work with us, data scientists who build amazing models for product to go away and kind of take into their programs or into their learnings. And we have an amazing customer research team. So we always speak to our customers, we kind of segment our customers, and we build amazing models, as I said. So one of the models that we've built, RFV, which is recency, frequency, and volume, allows us to see how engaged you are as a customer with us. So every single person that comes to the FT, whether it be a subscriber or an anonymous person, is scored. And that in turn allows us to create amazing user segments that we then can tell product teams to focus on. So if you went to a product team member and said, hey, go and increase engagement, what would that person do with that? Absolutely nothing, because it's such a big monolith of where the hell do I go to try and find out how I increase engagement. But through these models, through the learnings that we get from all of this data, we're able to segment, as I said, our users and then create user journeys and kind of build great products on top of that. Now, across the entire organization, we have a lovely union. We used to call it the Three Amigos. Someone didn't really like that. But we have a director of product, we have a director of delivery, and we have a director of technology. So it's about why are we doing something? How are we going to execute that through delivery, and also how? So what's the solution? Is it building a particular piece of software? Is it blending it with an existing piece of software? And so on and so forth. This union, this marriage, is mirrored across the entire organization. So whether you're a product manager in a particular stream, you will have the support of product tech and delivery at the top of that. Empowerment is something that is quite a cliche. It gets thrown around a lot in many different organizations. But at the FT, I truly actually believe that it happens because I've lived and breathed this. So empowerment is not about telling your teams what to do or how they're going to get there. It's about giving them an outcome, right? So give them an outcome, give them an objective, give them an OKR, and let them build whatever they need to, or particularly, through qual and quant, kind of figure out how to get there. And I think that that's really important. This is why people love working at the FT. And we work across all of this as one cross-functional team. You can see the various disciplines on the screen there. I'm not going to bore you with all of those. There's quite a few. In your typical team, you'll have about 12 to 15 people that span across all of those areas. But this is what makes the team so great. They bring in ideas from various different places, and they come from different disciplines, and actually they make the product work. But I've told you all the good things about the FT, right? With every large organization, large-scaled organization, there are some challenges that come with it. And I'm sure many of you have experienced what I'm about to show you. So what are the problems that we needed to solve in terms of making this, even better than it was? So that one of the problems that we had was many different siloed programs working across either very similar outcomes or very differing outcomes. Now those programs, yes, they were joined up in a way that, dependencies were managed and things like that. But a stakeholder would come up to one of the particular programs, to FT.com, and say, hey, I want to build this really rich, engaging experience for my B2B clients. They're going to come on board, they're going to see this thing on the homepage, and la da da. And what we would turn around and say is, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? So we'll try and get that right. And then they'll turn around and say, okay, so how that happens and how that affects my sales process or how that affects my CRM or marketing processes. And we'd go, oh, sorry, you can't talk to us about that. You have to go to a completely different program to talk about that. Well, that's not great for a stakeholder, right? They have to talk to so many different parts of the organization. So this is how we were built up. And of course, conflicting strategies and lots of demand from different places. The same stakeholder, this is a very, very real example, last year had an operating plan and a strat plan. And they come across to you and they kind of say, this is what we need to make happen. And again, we'd say, okay, so working on FT.com, these are the 3 things that we can make happen. But actually for your other 10, you need to go to 2 different programs over there. And those 2 different programs, by the way, won't be able to get to your thing until next year because they've got their own priorities right now. So that was a huge problem, and actually something that we face on a daily basis. And of course, then that leads to confused and very, very grumpy stakeholders, right? They're not happy with you. They're not collaborative with you. They actually don't even trust you as product team members. They don't know what's going on. Their strategy is all over the place and you're not making it alive. And then, of course, you've also got competing investment demands. So our investment board would actually go and give us money for outcomes, but actually underneath, the programs would actually get the money. So how does that even work? Like, how do you even kind of break down the outcome and have 4 different programs working across it? It just doesn't make sense. And of course, you had, in the example that I gave, one stakeholder talking to many different product managers, getting super frustrated, escalating this problem time and time again, and kind of going, I just want one person who will understand my strategy end to end, and then I'll be so super excited and super happy. And of course, product strategy and priorities were expressed at program level. So we had all these silos. And as I said, dependencies were managed, but actually you wouldn't see the fruits of that labor until a year down the line because you had to go through all of these silos to try and make your strategy come alive. And we were operating at initiative level rather than strategic, right? So Brexit happened a few years ago. We all voted. No one knew at that time how it was going to impact us, like a couple of years later, and the fact that there's going to be all these delays and how it's going to impact the economy. Some people were just fixated on one thing, which is immigration. And this, is a classic example of nobody voted to be poor. Well, actually, no stakeholder of ours votes to be grumpy when they come into work and have to go to so many different loops and heaps and hurdles to get to where they want to. And actually, all of this is our strategy, right? So we shouldn't think about the stakeholders as just us and them. This is our entire strategy. So what happened? Along came GDPR. Now, how did this regulation turn our thinking around? As I said, no one wanted to turn this, touch this project with a barge pole. And actually, a lot of product managers were saying, I'm going to die a slow death if I do that for 6 months. I'm not going to learn anything. It's going to give me more gray hairs. It's not going to teach me anything about product, actually. Why would I do that? So this numpty here, this Muggins, decided to take on that challenge because for you as product managers starting your early careers, I was speaking to someone earlier, grasp every challenge that comes your way because there will be an opportunity that comes out of it. And this is why I'm director of product today, just because I took on the biggest challenge that the FT was facing at that time. So why was it so great? Okay, a lot of people come up to me afterwards and today still, a few months later saying it's the best project I ever worked on. But why was it so great? It was great because for the first time in the FT, we brought a number of programs together. working towards a shared outcome, working towards a shared goal. And in fact, for one product that I had to build for GDPR, the single consent store, I managed to bring 12 programs together into a stand-up every single day, hugely motivated, hugely enthused. Why? Because they knew where we were going with it. And actually, again, the empowerment thing came into it. No one told us to build a single consent store, but we knew consent was stored everywhere, and we needed this single place to try and kind of hold it. So this is why it was so great. And obviously, the entire organization had backed us up. It was the biggest priority in the organization. It helps, but actually this can happen on a daily basis within your organizations as well. You don't need a GDPR to do that. So, as I said, it was great because there were clear priorities and outcomes, investment towards a strategic theme, single prioritized backlog across all of the GDPR streams, actually, and that's hugely important. So we had one product lead and one delivery lead who was aware end-to-end how this strategy was going. And I call it a transformation program because to me it really was. It really changed the way that the FT works right now. We also had cross-functional themes and streams that we were working on. We had 6 different streams, again, backed up end-to-end by a holistic strategy. And as I said, it helps to have one singular lead that looks after all of that. And more importantly, we were clear about the problem that we were trying to solve. Slightly easier because you'd get a hefty fine, but we were still very clear about what we had to solve. So how did this project sort of help us across product change our way of thinking? So we turned siloed programs and turned them into cross-program strategies. So what we did was we looked at each director of product and we said to them, you are looking after this particular outcome, but it doesn't matter whether that outcome is met in different programs. You have to look at this end to end and you have to own that strategy. So whether it means for that one stakeholder that I keep talking about, whether it's about his sales strategy or whether it's about CRM strategy or whether it's about marketing strategy or whether indeed it's about the digital strategy, one person looks at that entire outcome and looks at the entire strategy across all 4 programs. And we didn't have to break programs, we didn't have to change line management, something I'll talk to you about in a second, but we are making it work right now. We also focused on the outcomes that we were trying to achieve, so taking away the silos and kind of working towards those OKRs and really bringing them to life in terms of, okay, if we're focused on acquisition, let's look at the end-to-end acquisition journey, not just what you see on ft.com in terms of acquiring new customers, but also marketing and how you kind of make that all happen. And then what we also did as part of this initiative, now we have used methodologies across the FT for several years in terms of prioritization techniques, right? But we chose a prioritization methodology that, one, would be simple to use for us as part of this process, resonated with all of us and indeed our stakeholders. And actually, someone said to me that an example someone keeps giving me is if you talk to someone in Amazon, a product manager in Amazon in Seattle, and you talk to a product manager at Amazon in London, they sing from the same hymn sheet in terms of prioritization techniques, right? So they all use the same methodology across the board. And actually what this instills is trust in our stakeholders to know that we're all following the same thing, same theme. But tailor the framework to your organization. Don't just take a framework. There's some examples there. Don't just take a framework and try and implement it in exactly the same way. Ariel said earlier, right? Be inspired by it and take that and tailor it into your organization. And it's hugely important to gain buy-in from all your stakeholders for this as well, because they're the ones who are going to kind of help you get this score, right? So reach, it's the RICE score. This is what we use at the FT. We've implemented this across the board. But actually, tailoring it in terms of the science and the mathematics behind it is something that you can tailor to your organization. So we have various different scientific models that we've put into this that are specific to the FT. So things like lifetime value, things like the engagement score that I talked about, that all helps us to kind of understand the confidence, understand the reach, and understand the impact that something's going to have. What we also did as a change, so going back to the GDPR example where we had a single prioritized backlog, we now have a single prioritized backlog for each outcome across all 4 programs at the FT. So we've broken the silo of a program backlog. They're still able to have that where there are no dependencies and there's just stuff that they have to do. But actually, every single item is very visible to everyone. We've used the framework that I just talked about to get it on there in the first place, and all the directors of product as well as the stakeholders kind of buy into that. So this is a really interesting thing that I learned throughout this process, and a lot of my colleagues have learned as well, is don't break the silos, just bend them, right? Tailor them to your needs in the organization. Create those genius bonds around the organization that will allow you to have all this knowledge, the talent that you require, the cross-collaboration, but still coexist as programs. So you're not taking away the different programs that we have. You're not changing line management. You might have a product manager having a dotted line into another director of product. That's absolutely fine. But bend the silos rather than breaking them completely, because that doesn't work either. Bringing everyone on the same journey is hugely important, and something that I really kind of advocate at the FT. So making sure that this strategy goes across every single corners of your organization. So everyone should know what that strategy is about, how it's going to influence them, how it's going to impact them, and how we're going to actually make it happen. And one thing about strategy is that always fails, I think, is those people that put strategies together that don't actually think about the execution as well, right? So some people put a 5-year strategy together. I mean, how many of us have had that work in the past? Probably 0. So think about the execution and think about how you're going to get there as well. The biggest challenge that we had throughout this whole process was territorial, right? So a lot of us are quite territorial. We've been focused on FT.com, for example, for a very long time, or I've been focused on group products, and it's just kind of letting go of that and breaking that kind of mentality and saying, no, I need to be the owner of this particular strategy and I'm going to make it happen. So choosing an owner was probably the hardest part out of all of this, but actually we're living and breathing it now and seeing the benefits of it. And I think a few last points. So holistic thinking. So don't think about just the end or the beginning. Thinking about that end-to-end cycle, that end-to-end strategy that will allow you to influence those outcomes is what we've been learning in terms of just breaking down these silos a little bit and bending them here and there. And of course, having this, I keep talking about it, but the end-to-end non-program specific strategy. It has to be an outcome-led strategy. We live in a world of outcomes, goals, and objectives, right? So our strategies should definitely be kind of playing to those. The other thing that we're trying in one of the particular areas that I'm working in, so FT Group Products. So FT Group Products, just to quickly let you know, comprises of all of the specialist titles, FT Live and events, and the joint partnerships that we have with Nikkei, our owner, our Japanese counterpart. And by the way, that's another talk that I can definitely give you, because working with them is the most challenging ever. But anyway, what we're trying out at the moment is almost like a single outcome-led management team. So I've talked about product and technology and how we're kind of aligning ourselves, but recently I became part of the specialist titles management team. So that means that I work with editorial, the head of commercial, the head of marketing, all these disciplines that you see here, and we make decisions in terms of what outcomes we're going to focus on for a particular quarter or a particular month or a particular half of the year. What that helps our teams do is be very focused. So say, for example, we choose engagement as our next one, which is a very real example, actually. We are going to choose engagement. The entire business unit, the entire organization within that realm of specialist titles is now working towards that single outcome. Right? So editorial aren't going off and working on something else. Marketing are not working on acquisition. Everyone is coming together and working on engagement. And actually there's power in that, because that enables us as product people to attribute our successes to a particular outcome. Everyone's got shared outcomes as a result of that. And we bring back joy amongst our stakeholders, right? So they're happy puppies, bunnies, whatever you like to call them. Because, and this is very real, so if you fail to achieve your goal, change the strategy and not the goal. And I think that's really, really important. So a lot of people fail in outcomes and goals. The strategy wasn't right, simply. And remember that where there is alignment and you're all rowing the same boat towards the same objective, there is perfect harmony as well. Thank you very much.